Hello, and welcome back to the Former Review. Today, we'll be talking about the 2020 film, The Midnight Sky. So sit back, relax, maybe grab a drink, and let's talk about this movie.
What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Formal Review. This is Season 3, Episode 45, and I thank you all for tuning in once again. Now, I know I've said in previous episodes that watching new films has been difficult for me without me having a specific reason to watch them, and this can really range from movies that I really want to see, but I also take requests, and I honestly had not planned on watching this movie, but Tony from Build Montage reached out to me and requested that I watch and analyze the movie, so I said I would. So in this episode, I will be giving my analysis on the film along with my top 3 George Clooney films and a small update to my movie collection, so stay tuned. Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? When I was trying to get this podcast off the ground, I had a lot of questions, like how do I record an episode? How do I get my show into all the apps that people like to listen on? How do I make money from my podcast? The answer to every single one of those questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing my podcast. And best of all, it's absolutely 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now Anchor can match you with some great sponsors. That means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's exactly what I'm doing right now. So if you've always wanted to start a podcast and make money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start to join me and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. Again, that's anchor.fm/start. And I can't wait to hear your podcast. So there's just one small upgrade that I did post about already prior to the new year, and that's only because I had the interview in the last episode with the directors from White Lies. So if you haven't heard that one, go check that out. But if you don't want to hear about the upgrade, you can skip ahead to about the 3-minute mark and then play on from there, where I start talking about only the movie. But I did want to just give a quick update to it. So I was able to upgrade Ant-Man, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. So I purchased Ant-Man at a small sale, but not really. But the purchase allowed me to get enough points to get Ant-Man and the Wasp and the Guardians completely free thanks to Disney Rewards. And for me, like when you divide basically a $20 movie divided by 3, that knocks it down to little under $7 a movie, which is a great sale to upgrade 3 Marvel movies to 4K. And then when I sold the old ones, I was able to get all of them down to about $5 a movie. So I was pretty happily doing this, as these are all fake 4K, along with the fact that normally these movies all cost about $20 outside of Black Friday sales or comparative sales. So getting them for about $5 each is a really good deal. So if this is your first time tuning in, fake 4K is a concept that basically means not everything was done in 4K format, such as the filming, the digital intermediate, and then put on a disc. Now, these films were not that. All of them were put on 2K digital intermediates. So Ant-Man was shot digitally at either 2.8 or 3.4K, but put on the 2K digital intermediate. Ant-Man and the Wasp was on digital cameras up to 8K, but then put back down to 2K digital intermediate. And then Guardians was shot entirely on camera up to 8K, but again mastered as a 2K digital intermediate. And slowly but surely I am upgrading all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe to 4K. However, a lot of them are fake 4K, and they're pricey, so I won't be doing it unless I find a sale like I did here. And so far I've upgraded all of the Avengers movies, Black Panther, and then now these ones. So there's still a long way to go, but we'll get there eventually. Alright, so now on to the movie at hand. Let's sit back, relax, grab your drinks, and let's discuss the movie. So before I get into anything about this movie, I do want to preface this with a slight spoiler warning. As always, I'll do everything that I can to not ruin the movie for you. However, I will suggest that you go watch the movie first and then hear what I have to say about it. But if you don't care about that, keep listening. Also,
I talk about this at the end, but the data shows that most people skip over that part. So I do want to reiterate the importance of leaving reviews on your favorite podcast service, because those reviews really help me grow and improve. A lot of you have talked to me offline, but I do really appreciate the reviews that already are out there. If everyone could just continue doing that, or letting me know any way that you think that I could grow and make this more entertaining, feel free, and I'll look at them and I'll grow as such.
So if you haven't tuned in before, what I try to do in each of my analyses is to kind of look at 5 things that make up a good film. And I haven't really been explicit about this before, but I think it's an important thing to include going forward. So these 5 things are story, characters, the details such as the score, direction, etc., the themes and messages of the film, and then the ending. And then analyze how these 5 things actually take place in the film. How does all of these things affect the story? How does the theme work with the character? And these 5 things are what makes up a good movie, objectively speaking. But if some of these things aren't integrated well into each other, then the film suffers. And that's what a film analysis is, and that's how I'm going to be progressing with how I look at these movies going forward, not only just giving my opinion about them. So, Midnight Sky is a 2020 science fiction film directed by George Clooney. So I gotta be honest here, George Clooney is not one of my favorite actors. I think he plays a lot of the same roles and doesn't really show much range. I don't think he's awful by any means, but I do think a lot of his roles are based on his apparent attractiveness. I can say he's a good looking man, but I do think he's slightly overhyped. Then again, I'm not really into men, so what do I know? However, no matter my thoughts on him, he has become one of the highest grossing actors of all time, with over $1.9 billion total box office gross and an average of $61.7 million per film. And he's been involved with 13 films that have grossed over $200 million at the worldwide box office. He has also received 3 Golden Globe Awards and 2 Academy Awards, one for Syriana in 2006 and the other for co-producing Argo in 2012. Then, in 2018, he was the recipient of the AFI Lifetime Achievement Award, and according to IMDb, he has acted in 92 films, directed 9, written 5, and produced 39. Now, out of those 92 roles that he has played, here are my favorite ones that he has done. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? I think that's a great film. I love the retelling of the Odyssey. I thought that was really well done. Syriana obviously is really good, and honestly, the Ocean's movies. I really think that he captures that role perfectly. So this film also stars Clooney, in addition to directing, as a scientist who must venture through the Arctic Circle to warn off a returning spaceship following a global catastrophe. And Felicity Jones, David Oyelowo, Tiffany Boone, Damian Bichir, Kion Chandler, and Carolyn Springall also star in this movie. So this movie is based on the 2016 novel Good Morning Midnight by Lily Brooks Dalton. I've not read this book, but my research has shown that basically it examines the depth of humanity and the inner reflection one might experience when faced with the quote-unquote the end. And the author, Brooks Dalton, also stated that the novel tries to explore differences between how men and women feel guilt over their abandonment of their children. So then fast forward to June of 2019, where Clooney obtained the rights to make the film from this novel. So in the movie, Clooney plays Augustine Lofthouse, who has devoted his life work to finding habitable planets where humanity can then live on. And in 2049, an unidentified catastrophe wipes out most of the Earth's population and left the surface contaminating with ionizing radiation. As people are preparing to leave, Lofthouse stays, as he knows his life is short due to an illness that he has that requires hemodialysis. Now alone, he tries to find the crewed space missions to warn them about what's on Earth and telling them not to return. And he's able to find one called Ether. And Ether's returning home from an exploration of Jupiter's habitable moon K23, which Lofthouse himself discovered. Now the crew has lost contact with Earth, and Lofthouse's antenna is too weak to contact him. So this is basically the entire thing of the story, is that both of them are trying to contact the other one, trying to figure out what's going on, and Lofthouse trying to tell them don't come back to Earth because it's a problem here. So he's all by himself, but then he wanders the base and he's maybe going crazy a little bit, but he discovers a young girl named Iris. These two start to bond and then journey to get to another base that has a stronger antenna, so he's able to contact contact the ether. This story does end on a somewhat hopeful note, as most stories do, but it does have a few twists and turns that I won't go into too much here. However, I will say they weren't too unexpected, but the story overall is pretty sound. The details of this movie is where the movie really shines. I personally really love the score by Alexandre Desplat. He has composed scores for The Queen, Golden Compass, Curious Case of Benjamin Button, The Twilight Saga, New Moon, Fantastic Mr. Fox, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, both films, King's Speech, Danish Girl, Moonrise Kingdom, Argo, Rise of the Guardian, Zero Dark 30, Godzilla, The Imitation Game, Unbroken, Little Women, The Secret Life of Pets, and The Isle of Dogs. The score here was able to put you into this environment. I will say that some of the real life songs were an odd choice, such as Sweet Caroline by Neil Diamond. It does make sense given the situation that they're in. However, I will say because of the other issues that this film had, it does take you out of the film a little bit. But I'll go into that in a little while. So one of the best things about this movie is the cinematography. It is absolutely beautiful. Clooney filmed this on Iceland's Vatnajökull Glacier, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, which is the largest ice cap in Europe, and I think that really added to the film's isolated feel. And the final shot of Lofthouse is honestly really beautiful to look at, and there are other examples of this as well. The production design made sense for the story. The special effects, especially in space, were fairly good. Given a Netflix film, the ether sequences were also really done similar to Cuarón's Gravity, which also starred Clooney. The characters were pretty decent, and the star of it was Clooney. Like I said earlier, I am not the biggest fan of his, but here he really impressed me. It may be because I didn't really recognize him with that big bushy beard, but I will say that because of that beard, I focused more on his eyes, and his eyes provided a lot of emotion, and I think that there was a lot of history to his character and a lot of backstory and a lot of emotion that you could just feel in just looking at this character. And I think you can tell that he's been alone for a while and it's taken a toll on him. And I don't remember how long offhand, but either way, Clooney really is able to make it feel that he has been there for a long time. And his character has been investing in this new moon near Jupiter for his entire life, and I think that you gain a lot from these small amount of flashbacks, and this may be the reason for him to stay and communicate. However, it's a little bit more than that, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But the rest of the cast was fine. They just had very little backstory to them, at least until the end. Clooney decided to give all of these characters a lot of time on screen, but not much backstory aside from a one line of dialogue here and there, and they end up being fairly integral to the story. However, there was very little reason to care for them. The novel's theme of parental loss definitely exists in this movie. Well, at least on Clooney's side of it. Frankly, it's not executed until you see the end of the movie. And spoiler alert, okay, this is a big spoiler, but I have to say it here because it's a kind of integral to the theme. This is why Clooney was waiting around at the post. He wanted to make sure that his daughter was okay. He obviously regretted prioritizing his professional life over his daughter, and he ended up losing the relationship with her mother. And this regret is shown really well by the little girl who is always around him. She doesn't speak because he doesn't know what his real life daughter would sound like. Because of very real reasons of a person who does want to be in their child's life but doesn't know how to approach it, they do keep track of what's going on. So he knows that she ventured to the moon that he discovered. But until the end of the film, he's never spoken to his daughter. So him being able to speak to this kind of figment of his imagination and her not speak back makes 100% sense. He almost knows everything about her, but never spoke to her. And in the end, you can kind of tell that he has this relationship with her, and it may not be a parental one, but you can tell at the end of the movie he passed away in peace. And that's because he learns that he did have an influence on her life, even though she did not know it was a parental influence. It's very touching. Unfortunately, Clooney's direction on the film is where the film struggles a little bit. Overall, the pacing is a little off. The bits on Earth are really enjoyable, but the time spent on Ether was very, very slow. There's not really this defined catastrophe, which is accurate to the source novel from what I'm reading. However, this limits the amount of tension given to the story. But I will say that there was very little built tension throughout the entire movie. And even when there was tension, it came right after a scene where there was absolutely none, and then it went back to absolutely none right afterwards. It honestly felt that this tension came out of nowhere, and this works in the environment of space because these types of things could happen, but the transitions between these things really took away from that. It fades in and out and then goes through time lapses, but no real indication of how long things take place, and this is especially true when they're fixing the radar on the ship. The dialogue also was a little off sometimes, not in an awful way, but it was off-putting. So in summary, this film had a sound story that tied in the theme of parental regret through its main character. It had also strong details in the score and cinematography aspects, and the ending was very well done. However, the film struggles with its supporting characters and the details in direction, editing, and tension. Now, subjectively speaking, I will say I enjoyed the world that this film took place in, especially in this post-catastrophe Earth. I think Clooney created this world that was really cool to visit. I also really liked what they did with the young Augustine. So he was played by Ethan Peck, who is the son of the legend Gregory Peck. However, what they did was they made him sound more like Clooney by altering his dialogue so he would unmistakably sound as if he was a young Augustine or young George Clooney. And honestly, when I was watching it, I was expecting a digital de-aging process, and I personally really liked this a lot more because it felt so much more authentic than what they've done in a lot of digital de-aging movies where it kind of can look fake at times and not the greatest. Overall, this film wasn't awful, but it wasn't great either. It definitely struggled with connecting all of the dots of a good movie. It's not a bad movie or a waste of 118 minutes. It's just only an average sci-fi film that could have been really, really good, but ultimately it fell short.
Which unfortunately is becoming a weird trend for these Netflix original movies, and I hope it doesn't continue going forward, or Netflix is really going to go down the tubes.
Now, what did you think of the movie? Are there any movies that you want my thoughts on? Let me know. Hit me up on social media.
Former Review is on Facebook, Twitter, and the Gram. I post many things, including trailer reactions, so go check those out. The handle is all the same. It's at the Former Review. Feel free to also check out backseatdirectors.com, where I work with a big team to put out movie reviews and also editorials. Again, that's backseatdirectors.com. Please also subscribe to the Former Review. We're on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're now on Amazon Music, iHeartRadio. Honestly, pretty much anywhere you can find a podcast, we have our content there. Also, I'm always wanting to grow and improve, so please leave a review and what you want to hear, because I really do this for you all. I see the numbers, and I really appreciate everyone supporting me and talking to me about movies, because frankly, that's what it's all about. And for anyone who has supported me on a financial basis, thank you again. And if you want to help support on a financial basis, please go to anchor.fm/the-formal-review and click support this podcast. And honestly, any donation is appreciated. Thank you all again for tuning in. And until next time, wear your mask, wash your hands, stay safe, and take care, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Former Review. Cheers, and we'll see you next time.